Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are looking at the Olympic class starship from Star Trek, from the Federation. This is a ship that we had gotten to see just briefly in the Next Generation, and it is kind of fun to see different ships, all that. The shape itself, some people might say, is a little bit of an oddball, but really it harkens back to the old Daedalus class cruiser. Um, so getting to what we have here on Daystrom's website, now he's got a nice little write up, and we will get to that in a second. We'll kind of go through things here. Uh, this is considered a medical vessel. That's what we originally see it as, and that's the way that they have it presented here. And kudos to the people that actually are behind Daystrom Institute here, because they do have backstage sources and all that to be able to kind of draw on. Where, being honest, all I can go off of is the stuff that we have in various different role playing games and different articles and stuff like that. And that's one of the big reasons I do love going to Daystrom, for a credible source here to be able to say as to what they felt it was. Now, we do have stats from D6 Holocron, and they have a write up as well. So we will get to see what both write ups are as we kind of go through this. So, being a medical vessel, this was produced or commissioned in 2366 all the way through to present. The length here is roughly considered about 239 meters long, has a beam of 93 meters, a height of 96 meters, and has roughly about 23 decks to it. Um, because the way the nacelles are actually put onto this, it does shorten the vessel quite a bit from what we standardly would have a Star Trek vessel. Typically, especially from the Federation, we would have the nacelles sitting way back um, on the secondary hull and actually extend that out. This is actually, in a lot of regards, a little bit more compact in that regard. So it is a different take on things, and you know, it's always fun seeing different ways of doing a Starfleet vessel. All right, so we do have a mass listed here at 400,000 metric tons. The standard crew should be roughly about 360 personnel, with an evacuation limit of 1,360. So they can take on board an additional 1,000 people. Armament, because this is a medical ship, not really meant for combat. It has two Type 6 phaser arrays with a total output of about 750 terawatts. Defense system is listed as having a standard shield system with a total capacity of 310,500 terajoules, a standard duranium slash tritanium single hull, and a standard level structural integrity field. The fun thing here is our warp speeds. Our normal cruise speed should be a warp 6. Our maximum rated cruise, or our maximum cruise speed, should be a warp 8, and max rated is warp 9 for about 12 hours. Only having beam weaponry, our beam firepower is listed as a 15. Our weapon range and accuracy is a 200. Shield strength is 115. Hull armor is 50. Speed is 792. And combat maneuverability is 6,230. So it's really underpowered as far as weapons go, really more as a deterrent and to help try and get it out of, say, like an asteroid belt or something like that. Really visioning it in those regards, not something to really take on other vessels. Maybe just uh, small craft or something like that. If a pirate is kind of going after them, that they can lightly defend themselves, but not in any major respect. Um, our overall strength index is listed as a 124. It's considered to have a diplomatic capability of 3. Has an expected hull life of 100 years, A minor and standard refit would be every year, and a major refit every 25 years. So we do have, let's see, the USS Olympic is still active. We do have three other named vessels: the USS uh, Pasteur and the USS Noble. All right, two others. I'm sorry. And now Daystrom is saying that 98 others have been built in all, with 80 of them having been lost. Now that differs from something else I was reading earlier today, where they kind of talk about it in a different regard, but I'm not going to worry too much about the specifics here. Being a ship that we get to see just briefly, um, and it was, in the episode that we got to see was All Good Things, which was the final episode where it was Captain uh, Dr. Beverly Picard captaining one of these, and I believe it was the USS Pasteur that she was on. I could have this wrong, um, and it's one of those things of that is an alternate timeline, but it was rumored, and we will read that here because I know he's got it listed that it was supposed to be an active ship here. And the write up that he's got here is actually pretty decent here. So it's not a big write up, but it is pretty forthcoming in some ideas for the information of where we're getting things. All right, the Olympic class stems from a Starfleet requirement issued in 2360 for a new class of medical vessel to replace the aging Nightingale class. The new ship was to improve on the Nightingale in every respect. It would incorporate a complete starbase level mobile hospital capable of catering to up to 1,000 patients, compared to the Nightingale with having only 560. The warp and impulse drives, computer systems, etc., were to be in up to the latest standards. Starfleet chose the Olympic for several proposals, or from several proposals in 2363, and construction began on the first of the class in that same year. The ship was launched in November of 2365 and completed its shakedown cruise successfully in 2366. Whoops, I get Indy visiting me here, so and then she goes on the floor. All right, series production began at once, and 16 ships have now joined the fleet. The Olympic has proved very successful in service, and it's highly popular with its crews. Their early careers were relatively uneventful, although the USS Olympic herself rescued several hundred survivors from an immediate aftermath of battle against the Borg at Wolf 359. With the Dominion War, the Olympics have seen a great deal of active service and have been responsible for saving many hundreds of lives. All right, so we got our first good look at the Olympic class ship in All Good Things when the USS Pasteur was commanded by Captain Beverly Picard. At that time, I this is the author here. Took it to be a completely new future design, but I am assured by several sources that the Olympics were already in service in the next generation times. I've made them fairly new designs to explain why they are apparently still frontline ships in 2390, plus timeline of All Good Things. The idea that the Olympic picked up several survivors after Wolf 359 is to explain the discrepancy between Best of Both Worlds and Emissary. The former had the Enterprise D pass through the battle area some hours after the battle, with data reporting no sign of survivors, while the later shows Commander Sisko and many others escaping in pods or shuttlecraft at some sort. If a regular starship picked up survivors, you'd expect it to head off to encounter the Borg. If an unarmed Olympic did the job, it would head for the nearest starbase, leaving the area deserted when the Enterprise D passed by, which is a very good point that is being made here. So I do agree with the author. I think he has a very good aspect as to you know where things would have kind of gone. And again, this is always one of those problems. Star Trek has got a lot of issues in the writing. I mean, I'm not trying to bash it in any regards. I think a lot of the episodes are really good, but there's always some small discrepancies here and there. Like the original series, because warp was just a number thrown out there. Where in the next generation, they had a tighter grasp as far as those things went. Um, in the original series, at one point, warp 6 might be their top speed. The next episode, it could be 9. Then it could jump up beyond that, going back and forth. The next generation had corrected a lot of those errors, but unfortunately, whenever we go back and try to throw something in there, now we create different errors that we didn't intend to. So that's really more of the issues that I have with some of the storytelling. Don't it's one of those, sometimes we just have to take a little bit of the factual stuff, set it off to the side, and just go with the story to make it make sense. And this is just one of those cases. It was unintended that they made a slight discrepancy, but it is just one of those things of just kind of go along with it, and we will just kind of do it. um, but it's a show that started later, but they weren't realizing they were causing problems because of a line here. And I could be, that same thing can be pointed out in so many different other sci-fi shows as well. So it's not like Star Trek is the only one. I mean, Star Wars has done plenty of those things as well as many other sci-fi shows. So let's get into our D6 stats, and we also have a write up to read from what D6 Holocron has got on the bottom of theirs. So let's get into there. All right. So um, looking at the Olympic here, it is considered still a hospital ship, capital scale. Now they have the length being 330.5 meters. So this is a little bit bigger, with a width of 155 and a height of 124. So they do have this as a bigger craft here in D6 Holocron's stats here. And the ship mass is quite a bit bigger too, because it is now 1,695,000 metric tons, making this a size 6 starship. We do have an autopilot of a 2D plus 2, so if you really needed to, you could have it pilot just a little bit better than our galactic standard, but not by much. All right. With our ship being bigger, now they do have it listed as having a crew of 750, significantly larger than what we had had before. And a skeleton crew of 75 can operate the ship with a plus 10 to the difficulty. All right, passengers. We can get 2,600 passengers on board, really dwarfing what we were seeing by Daystrom's standards, and our cargo capacity is 266,000 metric tons. We do have listed consumables for about 2 years, and their warp drive is upgraded a little bit. They have a standard warp of 6, max warp is 9, and max rated is 9.2 for only 6 hours, though. Of course, we're going to have our nav computer. Maneuverability is being listed as a 1D. So not the most maneuverable ship in the fleet, but not the worst. Space speed is a 9. Our hull is 4D, and shields is 1D plus 1. Having a lighter shields would be reflective, seeing that it is not a combat vessel. Sensor packet here. We do have passive scans going out to 4 kilometers with a 1D bonus, an active scan going out to 12 kilometers at a 1D plus 2 bonus, an active search going out to 15 kilometers with a 2D bonus, and a focus out to 500 meters with a 2D plus 2 bonus. Now, again, they do have only two Type 6 phaser arrays being listed here. Rate of fire is going to be a 5D, and damage is going to be a 2D plus 1. They also have listed, upgrading everything, two Type 6 phaser arrays. Um, these are dorsal and ventral, where the top one is dorsal and ventral as well. So almost like it's kind of copied, but it's a essentially a second set of phaser arrays here. Um, Fire rate is going to be a 2 with a 2D plus 1 damage. So the same damage, a lower fire rate, and a little less uh, kind of covering for the fire arc here. We do have two class gamma tractor beams, one forward, one aft, with a strength of 3D plus 2. We do have a class alpha tractor beam for their shuttle bay, which has a strength of 3D. Oops. Now, crew quarters. We do have basic for 2,800, expanded for 500, luxury for 100, and 50 unusual crew quarters. For a hospital ship like this, that does seem like it would make quite a bit of sense because if we have species on board different ships that we're trying to take care of, you may need a higher unusual quarter setting than what we would normally have on most ships. Um, so, thinking about it in those regards. Now, they do have this listed for having 27 decks. We do have 200 escape pods with a capacity for 12 personnel in each pod. They have it listed as being commissioned in 2361. We do have 6 personnel transporters with a 4-person capacity, 6 emergency transporters with a 24-person capacity. We have 3 cargo transporters with 400 kilogram capacity. My little take here, and this is just completely mine, the transporters I would say should probably be more like a 6 person, like what we would have normally seen on either the Enterprise D or even just the original Enterprise, because that would be more of a standard. This is supposed to have the luxuries to take care of people. I think being able to move 6 personnel at a time would make a little bit more sense, but that's my take on it. So let's just see how it is. All right. So complement for shuttlecraft, we do have uh, 2 shuttlecraft, all adapted for use as ambulances. We have 4 shuttle pods, again, all adapted for use as ambulances. The shuttle pods are probably there so that way they can collect any escape pods and bring them on board, where the shuttlecraft could maybe be used to ferry people back and forth from planet side or whatever. We do have 40 probes on board. In our description here, the Olympic class was a type of Federation starship in service in the late 24th century. It was used by both Starfleet and civilian institutions in roles such as science vessels or hospital ships. DS9 novel, The Missing, Star Trek Countdown comic, Countdown number 3, and of course the Next Generation episode, All Good Things. History wise, the Olympic class was in Starfleet service as early as the year 2361. This comes from the Last Unicorn games reference, the price of Federation or the price of freedom. At least one ship of this class, the USS Passeur, underwent construction in the Marin County Starfleet yards on Earth by the Yards Skywalker Division, which is funny that they had always thrown that stuff in there. Those are some of the little tidbits that were never really meant to be seen, and it's been mentioned that because there was a lot of overlapping, they would have Star Wars references, but because they were in backstage doors or whatever, most people didn't get to see them. and sometimes it would show up on some of the screens that in standard definition back in the day you were never going to see, but when everything got upgraded to high definition, those names became available to be seen by accident. So it is a funny little nod to some of the pranks that went on backstage. All right, in 2370, the USS Noble participated in a search and rescue mission for the missing USS Hera. This is the Next Generation episode Interface, Star Trek Reference Encyclopedia. Let's see, despite its usual non combat role, the Olympic class participated in some capacity in the Dominion War during the 2374 2375. The Noble reported many casualties during the conflict. This is Deep Space Nine episode Sacrifice of Angels in the Pale Moonlight. And then we also have the Deep Space Nine Companion. This class is still being produced by Starfleet by the 2380s. And in 2385, a brand new ship, the Anthony Donald, was loaned to the Rosalind Franklin Institute for biomedical research for a groundbreaking science and research mission headed by Dr. Uh, Martua Tang. I think I pronounced it correctly. I'm going to admit I probably messed it all up. This comes from the Deep Space Nine novel The Missing. In the year 2387, three Olympic class medical frigates, including the Galden and Fleming, were dispatched to offer aid to the Romulan Star Empire following the destruction of Romulus by the Hobus supernova. All three ships were destroyed in or on the orders of Nero from his mining ship, the uh, Narda. Uh, I know I'm messing that one up. I know I've seen the movie, but I just can't think of. I want to say call it Nardia, but there's no I in there. All right, the Olympic class was still in service by 2395. In an alternate reality caused by the anti-time rift, the USS Passeur was commanded by Captain Beverly Picard, and this is the Next Generation, the novelization and comic adaptation of All Good Things. By the 25th century, the class had been refit and continued to serve as hospital ships. In 2409, the USS Salk ferried medical supplies from the Allied to the contested zone of the uh, Solian Dyson Sphere. This is Star Trek Online mission medical relief. Specifications: the 300 plus meter long Olympic class was comparable to size of the refit Constitution class, and like that class, shared a layout with many other Starfleet starship classes, having a recognizable primary and secondary hull with two warp nacelles. The Olympics bridge was located on deck 1, with crew quarters on deck 5. A twin probe slash torpedo launcher was situated at the fore of the primary hull, amidships, and the impulse engines at the aft. The navigational deflector strip was located on the lower primary hull, and a sensor pallet made up the ventral surface of the hull. Airlocks were positioned either side of the secondary hull beneath the nacelle pylons, and the main shuttle bay was located at the aft of the ship. For defensive and tactical situations, the class was equipped with deflector shields, phaser arrays, and the aforementioned probe slash photon torpedo launcher. Now, this is a Star Trek reference, the Star Trek Encyclopedia, the Next Generation episode All Good Things, and Official Starships Collection issue 42, USS Passeur, NCC 58925. So this is also everything coming from Memory Alpha and Memory Beta, which is where they get a lot of their information from. So It's an interesting ship. I know that there's a lot of people that don't really care for it because it's the big old gopher ball here. Um, you know, the fact that it's kind of harkened back to the old Daedalus class, which I do remember when I watched All Good Things. That's the first thing that I came to think of was the old Daedalus class. It's an upgraded version of it, which makes a lot of sense in so many ways. When we look at a lot of the Starfleet ships, we can see design progressions from, this is what it should have looked like in the original series. This is what we got in the movie era where everything was refit, and made to that specifications. And then again, in the next generation, what we see, and even in a Deep Space Nine and going forward, there should be a lot of overlaps. Um, to say, like the Miranda class, when that gets retired, it gets replaced by a Centaur class. That should be the normal progression. And then there's other ones similar to the Centaur class that could be newer um, interpretations of what the Miranda class would be. Whether you want to go with bigger ships or smaller ships or somewhere in between, that's where we get these ideas. We need ships that can do the same mission profile, just, how do we replace it? And quite often, when we're looking at a lot of the Starfleet ships, you know, do you have the secondary hull or not? What kind of nacelles are we throwing on there and everything along the line and the way of how we do things here. Um, so many things share that same similar format, but they do that on purpose because you're looking at a Starfleet vessel, and you know that they're there as a explorer, as a friend, and not as a conqueror. Um, and it really limits us as to how creative we can get at times. Now we do see, like the Saber class and some of these other vessels, where we start thinking outside of the box. But there again, we start looking at ships that are meant more for combat and not the standard general Starfleet train of thought. But when we look at trying to respond to the Borg, and then later on with the Dominion War, um, thoughts start changing there. I mean, yes, we have fought the Romulans and the Klingons and everything else, but we still have that core principle of we are explorers and we are out here to help one another. And unfortunately, with Roddenberry being gone, we start seeing a pull for more combat and everything else. I'm not going to say that that's wrong because we need some background for some stories, something that gets us out in space into an area, and those are good reasons for that. To sit here and say that that is not what Starfleet is really about, but they're thrust into those situations, I fully agree with. But it doesn't mean that they're going to shy away from it because in order to help others, sometimes they have to do the things that they don't want to do. So, with that being said, thank you so very much for joining me today. It's always wonderful having you here. Hope you're having a wonderful day. I will see you in the next video.